black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live. Recovered on purpose.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in on this Wednesday afternoon. Guys, I am really excited to bring on this guy I'm connected to through this program I'm doing called the Flow Research Collective Zero to Dangerous, that I'm learning a lot about basically our minds and getting into a flow state, which is where we're most productive, and we're able to do things that we might not be thinking about, obviously in our addictions. And really excited to talk about what Josh is doing in this space, and specifically for addicts. So Josh is an EMDR consultant, an addictions counselor, and a positive psychologist. He is also the founder and clinical director of Resurface, an organization that facilitates evidence-based surf therapy, retreats for trauma, resilience, and flow, and creativity. He is based in London, UK. So we are coming to you live from literally different parts of the world. So I'm going to bring Josh on right now. Josh, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me along.
Absolutely. So I honestly got hooked up to you from a mutual friend and my coach in that research collective, Michael Menino. And when I looked at your website, you're doing things that I have literally never heard of. And that's exactly what I try to bring into the recovery community. So tell us a little bit about your background and what it is that you're working on now.
Yeah, so I've been in recovery a while now. And so I've got a lot of friends and a lot of people I've worked with, and I've worked in addiction rehab for a long time, and I've seen what really helps people, and obviously mutual support groups and all those sorts of things are fundamental to get to most people's recovery. But I also noticed that there are certain things that are missing in a lot of people's recovery, and I often find, and the name for that I discovered later on was flow. I noticed that a lot of people in recovery, like, their lives are so much better. They're like, I'm paying my taxes, I've got a girlfriend now, I've got a job, but there's just something missing. And I think a lot of addicts in recovery need something that still gives them that excitement, that buzz for life, that kind of hit from life, but in a really positive way. And I'd noticed, that friends had dragged me back to the skate park, and we used to go down to this night called Old Man's Night. Yeah. And that was a good laugh. And then we just started going surfing, and I saw how much thing was doing for people in recovery, how much it was helping them, and allowing them to connect to something bigger than themselves, allowing them to just be in the moment, doing something that's challenging, exciting. And one time I just had this moment of clarity where I thought, I need to start combining my work with these kind of activities and see how they can come together. And so I set up Resurface, which we do a lot of group therapy, mindfulness, a lot of psychoeducation, plus surf lessons, put it all together in the mix. And we just thought, this has got to work, and it did. And it's been going great ever since.
That's awesome. And for people that might not know exactly what flow is, how would you define flow for someone that may have never heard of it before this conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For someone who is a little bit more kind of knows about these things, I would say, the sort of psychologist definition would be an optimal state of consciousness where you're kind of you're performing at your best, you feel your best. But I'd say for someone who doesn't, be like, what are you talking about? I'd be like, it just means you're in the zone. If you've ever played any sport and you're in the zone where you're just completely at one with what you're doing, you don't even have to think about it. Everything is just working. That's being in flow. But I think it's really important to point out that flow isn't just a sports thing. you can be in flow in art, you can be in flow at work, you can be in flow if you're like really amazing at mathematics, you can be at flow. You can be at flow in great conversation, and that's actually the more people report being in flow talking with other people than in any other activity. So flow, the amazing thing about flow is it feels the same no matter what you're doing. So if you ever feel that you're completely at one, the time is just flying by, you're sort of pushed to the edge of your capabilities, but you're kind of loving it, then that's when you're in flow. A lot of musicians, jazz musicians talk about being in the pocket. Sports people talk about being, in the zone. There's a few other, just at one. Artists just talk about being at one with their work. They're all like ways of describing what we now just term as flow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that I've actually that I found, I always wanted to do something while I was addicted. I always wanted to go skydiving, but throughout my addiction, I never was able to get myself away from drugs that long, or afford it, or whatever it was that made it so I couldn't go skydiving. And I think probably the drugs were giving me that feeling plenty, so I didn't really need to go skydiving. And then once I went skydiving at like 6 months, and this is before I had really heard of or researched anything into flow, like that high to me is exactly what you're describing. Like that totally like in the zone, nothing else is going on. I'm not thinking about work or relationships or anything that's stressing me out. It's all completely gone in that moment. And I feel like, and I've heard this talked about from different conference speakers and things, that a lot of us addicts, we're trying to become present from using drugs. Like when we are, like they actually say that more dopamine is released right before we shoot up than actually when the drugs go into us. And what else are we possibly thinking about in that moment? Nothing, right?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, think how many dope fiends feel better when they're on the way to school. You feel best when you've got that money in your hand and you're going to the dealer. That's right. Kind of like the lift. Yeah, it's describing exactly what you're saying. But I do a lot of work in addiction rehab, and I was a counselor for a long time, and I still go back in and I do a lot of work around positive psychology, and they all want to talk about flow. And so I sell it to the like in rehab. You can do whatever you like. We just want you to be able to make choices again. But what I'm trying to sell to you is that you can go back out in school, or you can get the best hit possible at the perfect dose with no side effects. Which one is it? Because I can teach you how to do that if you want. And their eyes will light up, and they're like, "Tell me more, tell me more." and I've got them then. Yeah. As soon as you got that cell, boom, they're like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And then I take them through the flow cycle and explain all the different neurotransmitters that are released when and so on. And you've got people are like, wow, that's what I've been chasing all my life. I just took drugs instead, because it short circuits the whole flow cycle.
Right. And I see that my friend Wes is on here, and he actually did the same thing right around 6 months clean and sober as he went skydiving. And he explained the exact same thing that I explained, just like this euphoric feeling of presence, right? So if we weren't, and that's something like, we can't go skydiving every day, all day, right? We can't do these extreme sports all day, every day. What are some hacks for addicts in recovery to find these peak states, these performance states, or these flow states without always having to go towards extreme sports or things like that?
That's a great question. I would say there are a few things that I think yoga is a great source. Practicing any form of mindfulness is really helpful for helping you get into flow at a later state. So I would encourage people to practice that anyway. There's actually a lot of research, and from my own experience, that if you develop a strong mindfulness practice, that helps you with what's known as the struggle phase of getting into flow, because there's always a struggle there. but there are plenty of, as I said earlier on, flow feels the same no matter, like, I was a musician for years, and I used to play in a lot of bands, and I used to session for other people, and have these, sometimes I'd play these big events, and I'd play for like 2 hours, and I'd be completely in the zone, and it was just like amazing. And that is exactly the same feeling I got when I'm surfing, when I'm skating. So you could, you might well be able to get into flow painting, or you could get into flow writing. You might even be able to get into flow writing your step work if you're like completely in the zone. So, it's all about actually getting into flow. Is all about setting getting the challenge right, so that you're not too overwhelmed, but you're being pushed. And so you can get into flow. Like I at the moment, I've been like working on the other side of London. So I get the train early in the morning, and I know that the train is like 50 minutes. It's a 40 or 50-minute ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed to get myself at the front of the train in a spot, and I get my laptop out, and I know I've got 50 minutes to do X amount of work. And that challenge of that 50-minute timeline pushes me, and always suddenly I'm at the other end of the line.
Yes.
Because I've set it up that I'm complete, because I'm on a train, because you don't, one of the things to get into flow is you need full concentration and not to be distracted. And a lot of that research comes from looking at Google programmers. They always take about 20 minutes to get back in the zone when they're programming. So you need to be able to cut out a kind of background noise. So I put my headphones in, and I have the laptop there, so I'm not looking at the other people on the train. So I have that full focus, and I have the task, I have the challenge. I know exactly what the goal is there. If I don't have clear goals, you're not going to get in the zone. That's why sports are such a good source of flow, because you know what the challenge is, you know what the goal is. Well, the goal is to win. The goal is to get the ball over that line, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so if you have clear goals and you have those things set up, it allows you to focus in on what you need to do. Catch that wave, do that trick, impress that person, whatever it is, get that sum right, paint that picture, make it look like this, whatever it is. But having that clear goal focuses the mind and enables you to maintain the focus. If you don't have clear goals, it's very hard to maintain that focus. So there are many ways you can get into flow in like the kind of flow you're talking about, like skydiving, like is kind of like the higher end of the flow state, because one of the criteria of getting into flow as well is there needs to be a certain amount of anxiety. There has to be a certain amount of like risk, because that focuses you, it adrenalizes you, gets you only thinking about the task in hand. Mm-hmm. And nothing else. So if you're skydiving, it can be life and death. So you really got to focus.
Yeah.
So that's going to generate more intensity. Mm-hmm. But you can get into these kind of more gentle flow states as long as you set yourself a hard task. You've got clear goals. You're not getting distracted. Boom, you can get in the zone.
Yeah. One thing I didn't really call it like flow at the time, but September 28th, 29th of 2019, I decided that I'm publishing a book November 6th of 2019. And in those 5 weeks, like I went from blank page to published author. And the reason was because I felt like because November 6th is my sobriety date, and I wanted to launch my book and publish my book for my 2 years clean and sober. And in that zone, like I was going to sleep thinking about the goal. I was waking up thinking about the goal. I was cooking my lunch thinking about the goal. So that was like one of those prolonged like experiences of flow, right? And I think that in recovery, there's so many things that we can do outside, because a lot of people are getting like, they'll start their jobs, right? They'll start their careers. They'll do these things. And sometimes like you think somebody could get into flow by working on their credit or looking towards a home they want to get or some kind of car or something like that. What are some examples of some goals that people can set in their recovery that you've seen that have created flow?
Well, I mean, really basic ones would be to start with, would be just getting to their certain sobriety milestones. I'm going to get to this or that, the other. You know, I'm going to get 6 months. I'm going to get a year, and how am I going to do that? And then, I mean, the goal. I don't think the goal is any different. The goals are any different if you're in recovery or not in recovery.
Amen.
I think it doesn't. It makes no difference. Like, it's not. This isn't a recovery only thing or an exclusive to people outside of recovery. This is just like a human thing. But
Yeah.
I think addicts have an advantage in terms of that obsessive nature. That obsessive nature allows you to really latch onto something. But you know, I think I would say things like finding something that you really love doing. If you are able to do something, like I'll often say, like, if you are someone who walks and you love swimming and you love that sort of thing, and you could be like a lifeguard or a coast guard, and you could be paid. I mean, they don't get paid anything, but they are some of the happiest people you'll see because they love that. If you follow work that follows your values, then you can create the goals around that. You need to create the goals around the very things that you value. And then that is going to provide the motivation to keep you going and keep you going and keep you going. In like you're talking about, I had a 5-week window to write a book. Yeah. Okay. Is that possible? Well, yeah, it is possible if I do X amount a day, you know, and you break, and as long as you make clear goals each day, you can get there. And it's the same principle for anything that you want to set your mind to. I think a lot of people in early recoveries, the work is around re-education. So I think if you can set those goals, I think that's a way of getting into flow and really applying yourself to do that. You know, not just like, hey, yeah, I want to retrain, I want to go back to school, whatever, but actually, right, I'm going to go for that school. I'm going to get my application in by then. I've got to do, having those specific clear goals.
Yeah.
Is what enables you to get into the zone and with the task at hand. And I think I see a lot of people in recovery have very poor is the wrong word. Let's just say a lot of people don't have much clarity around their goals.
Yeah.
It's all kind of quite vague and non-committal. You know, I might do that. I kind of think I want to do that. No, you've got to get your goals clear, crystal clear. And then you'll find that the motivation comes that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate us getting the clarity on exactly what flow is and that it's not just a thing in recovery, but tell us more about these surf retreats and these flow stations that you're building and what they do for people. Yeah,
sure. So it kind of, what we wanted to see is you know, I do a lot of group therapy. I do a lot of what's called experiential group therapy, where you're trying to repair issues with developmental trauma. So primarily working with people's issues from their childhood, usually around neglect. We often say that, like, there's 2 types of trauma. There's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is usually the result of something bad happening to you. Maybe it's a car crash, maybe it's a robbery, maybe it's some form of abuse or an assault or something like that. And there are specific ways to work with that, mostly kind of in therapy, like in one-to-one therapy, either through CBT or EMD or things like that. And then you also have what is known as developmental trauma, which is what didn't happen to you. And that's really the neglect, like not being fed consistently, not being held, not being hugged, not having a consistent parent in your life. Maybe suddenly your aunt and uncles for a while, then your grandparents, then you're back at your dad's, and then your dad disappeared through a month and so on. So that kind of neglect, there are certain ways that we need to work with that. And we have to create safe environments and bring people together and allow them to re-experience things in a much more loving way. And so back in the day, they used to call it psychodrama. Some people call it psychodrama and some people call it experiential group therapy. But we create this kind of environment to be able to generate these kind of happier endings in many ways. And what we wanted to do is to see how do people respond to that kind of work after they've done something like surfing. Now, surfing is a brilliant sport for getting people into flow, because no matter your level, there's always another level to get to. So if you're a complete beginner, just being out in the water and maybe your goal is to stand up, and getting to stand up is like enough to really get you into the zone and into flow, and you feel great afterwards. And the same all the way through, like up to people who are intermediate and better than that. We always try and set a goal for the day, and that achievement of that goal creates a whole load of dopamine. You feel great, and then you go into the group therapy in a completely different state, coming out of a flow state. Wow. And going into the learn, because remember something we didn't say at the beginning, but those of you who want to look it up, like when you're in flow, learning accelerates massively, like by about 500%. Creativity spikes. Yeah, there's all these kind of amazing stats around the benefits of flow, and I wanted to take that and apply it to the therapy. So you've got people coming in, they're buzzing off what they've done. They also, at the end, when you come out of flow, you go into what's called the recovery phase. And when you're in the recovery phase, you're sort of you produce a lot of oxytocin and serotonin, and those are kind of the bonding chemicals. So you feel really great in the group, and that allows for much greater kind of connection, allows people to go a lot deeper, a lot quicker. So we're taking the flow as a hack to really enhance the group therapy. And we've been doing some research, and people are reporting things. We've got people who've been in rehab for months, and then they come on a retreat later down the line. They say, what we did in that 1 week was as deep as what I did in a couple of months in regular rehab, because the flow state enabled us to really go that much deeper. It just accelerated everything. And that's been amazing to see. And we're like pushing more of that research, and we're hoping to publish some later this year around that. But I think it's important to put out, we do surfing because it's really fun, and I've seen how many people have really loved surfing in recovery, and I've also seen how many people love trying something new, and there's something about being in the water and in the ocean, and that's very kind of connecting to nature. But I think it's important to say that it doesn't have to just be surfing. You could do this with skiing, you could do this with horse riding, you could do this with like rock climbing, you could do this with a whole load of, you could do this with skydiving. I bet you if we did some of these groups after skydiving, you get the same impact, the same effect as what's happening with surfing. But there's something really fun about being able to do that all together, a whole bunch of people together doing it. And yeah, so we're integrating the many benefits of flow into therapy, and making the therapy much more fun as well. So people are coming along for a very intense, deep week of learning and therapy, but they're having a really great time at the same time.
I love that. So I have a sponsee who came into recovery and was an avid rock climber, loved rock climbing. And one way that he brought it into his recovery was he actually started a rock climbing meeting. And what they do is there's this place movement Rhino here in Denver. It's a really cool space, and they actually are doing a meeting in one of the back rooms, and then they go out and climb. Do you think they should switch it from having the meeting and then going climbing to climbing and then having the meeting if they want to go deeper, or does it make a difference? I think they should try that.
I think they should definitely try that. I think you would find some very different results.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But remember there's different purposes though. So the purpose of the kind of group therapy we're doing is to try and repair some of those attachment wounds. The purpose of a 12-step meeting, I presume it's a 12-step meeting. The purpose of that is to encourage, what would we say? To encourage connection between addicts, to share your experience, strength, and hope, and to kind of help fill that hole in the soul.
Yeah.
So they are slightly different purposes of the two. So that has to be taken into account. But I would just say to you, try mixing it up. See if you notice a difference. I bet you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let them know that. And one of my other sponsees is on here right now, and he's one of the ones that I told you was doing the skydiving. And something that I've noticed in him is his excitement for building things. Right, he started the only LGBTQ meeting in his city. And he's doing a fundraiser that is a couple months from now, right? But his planning towards it is like that long-term flow that we're talking about. So it's like those determinate dates of something that you're building towards can create like a flow state in that, like a prolonged flow. And then there's these other things that you're talking about with these activities: rock climbing, surfing, horseback riding, doing these things to get into a flow state, like in that present time, to connect even deeper with other people. And I haven't heard that connection there with getting into flow state and then connecting with people. And Crystal hopped on here and says that she likes to hop into flow state with hula hooping. Maybe someone can start a hula hooping meeting, you know?
Well, it's no coincidence you see a lot of people hula hooping at festivals. You know, it's definitely something that people get into, and you can definitely get in the zone with that. Yeah, it's kind of anything that really gets you in the zone. And something that you said earlier as well, that I just want to pick up on this. When you were skydiving, you didn't think about anything else. And I think this is another way of selling flow to people in recovery is, do you want to have 2 hours when you're just not thinking about, you haven't got that thing on the back of your head whining away at you. You know, you hear people all the time say, sometimes I can't stop my thinking, or I can't shut my head up. Well, for those 2 hours, your head is shut up. You have that respite. You're able to turn that volume down for 2 hours, right down. And that gives a tremendous sense of relief and calm.
Yeah.
And that in itself becomes a motivation to keep going, to keep doing the good stuff. So I think that's another way of encouraging people to start integrating this into their recovery. Because if you listen to the interviews with skaters, skateboarding kids, they're usually like 11, 12 to 15, 16. They're usually potheads. They usually come from broken homes. They're usually they're not like, they're kind of like trouble, but they're not like extreme trouble. But that's often, there's an element of that in there. And when you interview them, they say, for those 2-3 hours when I'm skating, I can't think of anything else. I'm not thinking about my parents fighting. I'm not thinking about my brother who's in jail. I'm not thinking about where's the food going to come tonight. I'm not thinking about, and the list goes on and on. But it gives them that chance to just have a break from maybe the areas of their life they need to have a break from.
Right.
And it can crack that obsessive thinking. So there's so many benefits to this, not just to people in recovery, but particularly for people in recovery with these kind of issues.
Yeah.
Which most people in recovery share,
Right.
That kind of head that just won't shut up. So your head does shut up for those few hours you're in flow.
Yeah. And do you think, because I've talked to some neuroscientists and things that actually say that addicts, we have, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but we have a unique almost skill of habit creation, right? Because we lived so long in bad habits that our minds are actually wired to live habitually, right? And there's almost like, and I think you're onto something like really, really, really amazing for specific. I speak about the recovery community because that's where my heart is, my passion, my purpose, all the things that create, that for me. And I think that you're onto something with this being brought into the recovery community and people finding what they love and then connecting with people as much as possible, right? Yeah. And I just love what you're doing, man. I appreciate you coming on here. Is there anything you want to say to people before we close out?
No, just like if you're struggling, if you've been sitting here listening and thinking, well, that's all really great for all of you guys, but I don't know what my flow state. I haven't been in flow for years. I've just been like miserable for 25 years, and close your eyes and go back and remember what you used to do as a kid before, say, you were 10. What were the things that you used to love doing? Because kids are in flow all the time. Just watch them. They play for hours in the zone. And you think of what did I used to love? And maybe some of those things you can't do anymore, but find an adult version of it. Maybe it was just painting pictures. Maybe it was just kicking a ball around in the yard. Maybe it was reading, watching films or something like that. But, scan back in your life, find the things that you used to really love. I'll finish on this. I've been working with someone recently who used to love roller skating. And they were a bit of a championship roller skater. And they hadn't done it for 20 something years. And they put those skates on and they've skated every day for the last 2 months, and they are back in heaven, and they're doing it for themselves now, just to skate around the park and just have that time to themselves. And it's still in there, and they're in their 50s or early 60s, but it's come back, and they just found something they used to love doing, and it's just for them. And it's fantastic to see the power of that. So yeah, that's what I was suggesting.
It's a form of self-love, like a serious form of self-love, doing something that you love doing, like point blank period. That's one of the biggest forms of self-love you can do. People say, look at yourself in the mirror and say these affirmations, prayer, meditation, all those things are great, but setting time aside to do things that you love will amplify everything in your life. So I appreciate you saying that. And guys, this could be a new thing. Maybe each and every person in recovery finds what they love, create a community around what they love doing, do what you love, and then have a meeting after. Yeah. And it doesn't always have to center around like the 12 steps necessarily. It doesn't always have to center around like, let's not relapse or let's not use drugs. It can center around what we love, right? And this could be a whole new form of recovery. So Josh, I appreciate you so much being here, brother. Love what you're doing, and thank you so much. And guys, where can they find you? What is your website?
Please do. So the website is www.resurfaceuk.com.
resurfaceuk.com. Boom.
Yeah, and the Instagram is Resurface UK, and the Facebook's Resurface UK.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if anyone's got any questions or anything and they want to hit me up on that, please feel free to email me at info@resurfaceuk.com.
Putting that in the chat too.
Great.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
My pleasure.
Today. Awesome.
Okay.
See y'all. Love you guys.
Okay. Bye.